I'm here to listen. Why am I walking on this way?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Muse's AT Podcast, where you can relive my epic journey with me. This is Muse, and what follows is my Appalachian Trail story. Today's episode covers Wednesday, June 25th, 2025. Today, we get up, have a wonderful breakfast at the Sterling Inn. We'll talk about that a bit, meet a bunch of nobos, and realize that I'm really just not a purist. And also that I'm not really all that funny. Let's go ahead and get into it with today's haiku. This one was written August 5th, 2023. Seek not peace, but joy. Joy gives strength to seek virtue. And from joy flows peace. All right, so describing this picture first, the title to this entry is called A Paradox. And in order to first describe this picture, I think I'll go ahead and slide down here to the footnote to this entry. I did, on occasion, write footnotes. That was actually, honestly, I was kind of ripping off Zach Davis a little bit there. He had a lot of footnotes in Appalachian Trials. I was very entertained by that. His were actually quite funny. Mine were not quite as much, and ultimately I decided that I am not a comic writer, which I don't know if I was ever explicitly trying to be, but at the same time I would amuse myself a little bit, and I'd write these footnotes. So anyway, I'll go down to the footnote. I won't read it when we're reading the entry in a little bit, and I'll start describing the picture that way. So here's the little asterisk, and here we go. It would help if I could use the zoom in feature on my camera. Zoom out works beautifully, and the other side is fine for selfies, but zooming in just won't focus. When I get into places a bit less remote, I think I'll slip into a cell phone repair place and see if that's an easy fix. Later on, I did manage to get this picture of two ducks on a log. The title of this entry describes the picture. Yes, I am sorry for that. I remember I wasn't nearly as sorry a year ago as I am right now. Oh man, so anyway, the picture is... It is a not even very well zoomed in. You can barely tell that's what it is, but it is two ducks on a log. It is a pair of ducks. Okay, on with the entry. June 25th, 2025. A Paradox. Start, Sterling Inn, Caratunk, Maine. End, West Carry Pond Lean-To, Maine. Miles, 14.0. Just as yesterday was quite a social day on the trail, today was a lot more solitary. Actually, it turned out to be a bit of a mix. I hiked alone, having given my Sobo crew a decent head start on me, but I met a ton of nobos, not all through hikers, but a good portion were. They were Nature Beast, Papa Bear, Juicy Fruit, Lost Boy, Bear Tracks, hiked barefoot from Georgia, Buckaroo, Marshall, Last, Commando, and two more names I didn't catch. So amongst the solitude were sprinkled a number of fun 5 to 10 minute conversations. I started the day at the Sterling Inn in Caratunk, joining Guitar Hero, Kiddo, and Fuego for breakfast. Fuego excused herself early to get some stuff organized to leave, and I slid into her seat so we could better engage Ribbit and Spicy, who later sat down at the next table. Guitar Hero and Kiddo would make their way to Boston later today to catch flights, Kiddo to return in a week and continue, while Ribbit, Spicy, Fuego, and I took the shuttle back to the trail. Now for how and why the others had a head start. First order of business was to cross the Kennebec River, which they tell you not to ford and provide a ferry. The ferry is a guy taking people across the river in a canoe. He can take up to 2 at a time and already had a passenger going south when we got there. I told Fuego she could take the other spot, then on the next time across, Ribbit and Spicy. Midway through my ferry ride, the driver, an awesome guy, pointed out a bald eagle in a tree. It was really cool. It perched there for quite a while, and after I chatted with the driver on the south bank for a minute, I grabbed my trekking poles and my phone with the intent of rock hopping to where I could get a picture. Unfortunately, this was not successful, and that's where we have the asterisk going down to the footnote, as at one point I looked back up and the eagle had flown away. Thankfully, before I had hopped many rocks. Then I had 2 of those Nobo conversations, so by the time I started hiking, I'll bet Ribbit, Spicy, and Fuego had 1.5 miles on me. I wasn't too worried about it. I took it easy and had a great day. My first stop was Harrison's Camp, where you can get all-you-can-eat red, white, and blue pancakes. I actually had no interest in pancakes, as I was pretty full still from breakfast at the Sterling, but I'd heard this guy was cool, and besides, he had a bridge, so if you head to his camp, you skip a ford. Fording the rivers and streams can be quite fun, but it can also get stressful and slows you down a ton. There was no one at Harrison's when I got there, just a note that Tim had to go to town and would be right back. In the end, I didn't really need anything, and I'd already crossed the bridge, so I went ahead and left. For all my goofing off, I was actually planning a decently long day, 14 miles, which would put me in a great position to take on the Bigelow Mountain Range and be in Stratton on Sunday. It did get a bit long, and I got to the shelter around 7:30. Fuego is here, but Spicy and Ribbit must have stealth camped somewhere, and I didn't see them. Otherwise, they either stopped at the shelter I skipped for a 4-mile day, or pushed further than 14, and I don't find either of those scenarios too likely from what I know of them so far. All right, we're going to take a quick break to hear from the sponsors who help keep Muse's AT podcast on the trail. These are offerings that truly enhanced my thru-hike experience, so I'd really like you to check them out. Please look for and follow the links in the show notes to this episode. Looking forward to that lazy day on the couch, knocking down your Netflix queue and wondering what to wear? Quick answer, wear something else. Summit Ready apparel is clothing built for those who scramble over jagged rocks, reach the peaks, and actually enjoy getting caught in a torrential downpour. If you're someone who doesn't mind the elements and has the grit to crush the next segment anyway, look no further than Summit Ready to match your restless trail spirit. Check out the catalog at summitreadyapparel.com and get ready for your next adventure. That's summitreadyapparel.com. Looking for your next great trail read? Walk Uphill is a powerful story about leaving the emptiness of modern corporate life behind and finding a completely new beginning on the Appalachian Trail. It's about discovering what life can look like when you embrace freedom, lighten your load, and take it step by relentless step. I actually read this book myself during a couple rest days in Gorham, New Hampshire, right after conquering the brutal terrain of southern Maine. I literally couldn't put it down. I read it from cover to cover in 2 days. The book chronicles the real-life events of the author, Bounce the Hiker, in a twisty, shocking, edge-of-your-seat story that even the most imaginative fiction writer couldn't make up. Just a quick content warning, there is definitely adult material in this book, so I wouldn't recommend buying it for your 10-year-old's birthday. But if you're looking for a gripping, raw trail adventure, I highly recommend Walk Uphill by Bounce the Hiker. You can find it easily on Amazon by searching Walk Uphill Book, or just click the direct link in the show notes of this episode. All right, we've actually got a lot to do today. As far as the humor, I knew this entry was coming, and I kind of groan at it, but it's kind of, I don't know, it's a thing. I did dial it back, I think, a bit after this. I still remain my own snarky self, so you'll get, my personality. And I guess I apologize for that. I'm not sure. Then again, this one, The Pair of Ducks, I probably got Ratatouille and Timber like cheering right now. Okay, like I mentioned, a lot to do today because I make too many rules, I've come to realize. So I think I'm going to try to stop saying, I'm going to do this every time going forward, because here's what would be on the to-do list today. Because we're entering a new section, I would go through far out and cover the whole section so we could talk about what's coming up geographically. I would introduce all of the people that are hiking with me through this next section. And then because it's a hiking day, I would actually go through far out and go through all of the waypoints that we hit along the way on this day. And I think that covers it. But even that's a lot, and we'll see if we get to any of that, because we'll do that, but I think I'll try to stop being so stringent about it. And I wanted to actually take a step back in this episode anyway and describe the Sterling Inn a little bit. But before we even go there, I want to also give a nod to this being the day that I mentioned in a previous episode that I came to the trail with a bit of a purist mentality. And I suppose I was still mostly, but this would be the day that I definitely just threw that out the window. And I'll go ahead and explain why I'm saying that. Some of you probably already caught it. Up until this point, I had deviated from the trail twice already. But in both of those situations, they were safety situations. But that is always kind of given a pass. Like, you could still say you tapped every white blaze if the only reason you bypassed one was because you ought not to have gone by them. On this day, I skipped a section of trail on a blue blaze, and I didn't really add or subtract mileage. It was really very parallel, but I did it just to skip a ford. That would have been one of the challenges of the trail that day. So, not a purist. And going forward, I will blue blaze a little bit, but not a ton. But anyway, I'm a little more chill than what I originally thought I was. Before I completely leave that topic, it's probably worthwhile to talk about Harrison's. So this guy, Tim Harrison, he is out there and he has owned this land for like forever. I do believe he is an older gentleman, and he just, for the fun of it, for the service to the hiking community, he gives this great pancake breakfast. And many people would absolutely aim for Harrison's to get that breakfast. It's all you can eat and it's dirt cheap, and it really is just there to serve the hiking community. He also will let you stay on his land. And he has, I think, some cabins and stuff. Like I said, I didn't actually really stop there. I went there and poked around a little bit, ended up using his bathroom because on trail you don't pass up a bathroom. And then I moved on. But I heard numerous times on trail, Harrison's is a must-stop place. Again, I just had no needs because I had just gotten across the Kennebec, and before that had this amazing breakfast at the Sterling Inn. Which leads me to, I wanted to describe a little bit the Sterling Inn, a little bit of my experience at Caratunk as we're leaving it right here, and we were only there for the one night, so really don't have much of a time to pause, which is why those other things that I mentioned, those other to-dos, may actually occur next episode. To really get into the description of the Sterling Inn, I will first read this description that I asked AI to generate for me, because let's face it, it's a little over a year, so I need a little bit of help in kind of going back there as well. But then I'll fill in a little bit of what I remember as well. So here we go. When you pull off Route 201 into Caratunk, the Sterling Inn is pretty hard to miss. It's this massive, classic white clapboard building sitting right along the road, and it's been standing there since 1816. Back then, it was built as a stagecoach stop and a post office on the old Canada Road, a place for loggers, mail carriers, and travelers heading up toward Quebec to get a hot meal and a bed. 200 years later, it's basically doing the exact same thing for AT through hikers. The first thing you do when you hit the property is walk up onto that big wraparound porch, kick off your boots, and sit down for a minute. You're coming off some tough Maine miles, and just sitting on that porch, taking in the quiet of the Kennebec Valley, gives you the chance to breathe. Once you step inside, the whole place feels warm and steady. You've got creaking hardwood floors, cozy living rooms with wood stoves, and walls covered in local history and trail gear. It's got that relaxed, old New England feeling where nobody is in a rush and you instantly feel okay about setting your pack down and slacking off for a bit. And then there's the breakfast, which, let's be honest, is half the reason hikers look forward to stopping here. You wake up to the smell of coffee brewing and bacon on the griddle. You sit down to these big communal tables, piling plates high with pancakes, swapping stories with other hikers, and getting prepped for whatever the trail throws at you next, which in our case was the Kennebec River Ferry just down the road. Honestly, AI did pretty well. That covers my memory of the Sterling, like I said, pretty well. Some things that I would add. You heard from the interview with Ratatouille, this is forever ago, so you probably don't remember, but that there were a lot of stairs there. Absolutely a lot of stairs there, because it was really, as it describes, it was this cool, really old, huge building. And so there's staircase on one side of it, and then there's the whole upstairs area where I ended up staying that you could walk across to another one of those big spacious living rooms, and then stairs down on the other side of it, which is where the laundry would get done. Funny-ish story about the laundry. A couple things. First, it is this old building from 1816, like we found out there. and the electricity's not really necessarily great. So I think a few of us may have even packed our clothes up, still slightly damp. I remember I had stuff just out all over the room that I was in because, well, for one, it was a private room. We'll get to that in just a second. And also, the dryer had blown a fuse. So they blew a fuse to the dryer, couldn't dry my stuff completely, and so I had stuff. And some of the stuff, I guess, might have still been a little damp. The other thing, somehow, I don't remember, I lost a pair of socks. Actually, I'd lost a very oddly configured pair of socks, I believe, because if my memory serves me right, and I think it is, I lost 2 right socks. Now, most of you are probably like, what are you talking about, right socks? You just stick on socks, right? But I had the Injinji toe socks, which, as you've heard me say, totally awesome for me. Definitely 100% the reason that I had no blisters the whole time I was on the trail. But because they're toe socks, it actually matters to have a right and a left. I had at this point in time 3 pairs of socks in my whole gear setup. I would end up picking up a 4th in Rangeley and carry that to the rest of the trail. So I'd go onward with 4 pairs of socks. Carrie and Evan happened to bring me a pair of socks, and I said I'll keep them because why would I not? Anyway, back to this 2 sock set that wasn't a pair. One of them I ended up finding in my pack. I don't know where. It was like in the bottom of my pack or something like that. It didn't make it into the laundry in the first place. The other one, I must have ended up leaving in the washing machine because Spicy ended up handing it to me a week later at the Hostel of Maine. She's like, I did actually end up finding your sock, Muse. Here you go. And so it turned up in her pack at some point in time. So anyway, that's the sort of thing that happens, and I was glad to get all those socks back because I would have been really quite a mess if I only had 1 pair of socks going forward, which is what I would have had. Other than that, the other thing that was missing in that description was that as you get in, there's actually an almost general store type resupply. So it was great. It was set up with a counter back there and everything. And actually it was a pretty well-stocked resupply. And I remember I did resupply a little bit there. I didn't need much resupply at this point. I was only 2 days out of Munson, and I knew I had food waiting for me at the Hostel of Maine as well, because I had shipped a whole bunch of food forward, because Haley and I back in Munson had done full resupply for both of us, and I didn't need to be carrying all of that. But I got a few things, and I remember their selection was really pretty nice, and that also allowed for you to just grab stuff out of their freezer or whatever that you could then prepare just right there on site. Not that I did that, although I probably got a soda or something. But other than that, I really didn't do that. Although the one thing I do think that this is where I first got like the Gatorade bars, and I ended up really liking the Gatorade bars. I remember I ended up putting that into my pack and not really trying it for like a week later for whatever reason. I just had other bars and stuff like that. But I ended up trying that almost all the way through the Bigelows and being like, wow, that's pretty good. So I enjoyed the Gatorade bars, and my introduction was at the Sterling Inn. But then the reason that I really didn't prepare like a pizza or something like that they would have had there on site was because we went out for dinner and they provided breakfast the next day. And those would be the only 2 meals that I would have really had at the Sterling Inn. So going out to dinner was great. We were driven down the road by the hostel shuttle, which was how I got to the hostel in the first place, because the trailhead was a little ways away. As you heard last episode, it was about 2 miles, which I agree with Ribbit on that particular day. The 24th would have been a terrible day to do 2 more miles along the road. I got picked up at the trailhead. I got driven to the hostel, and I was given like not very long because the shuttle was about to leave for dinner. So I think I did get a shower and maybe even stuck my laundry in, I'm not sure. But then I got real quickly into the shuttle, and that was great because we were then brought to this lodge where, you might remember Ratatouille, they had a hot tub there. We didn't do the hot tub or whatever, but they had a great, I don't know, it was this rustic almost ski lodge. So it was a great ambiance as well. And then they also had a great menu. I actually don't remember what I ate. I remember really enjoying it. It might have been a pizza. I don't know. I think it was a pizza with, I think it might be the one pizza I got on trail with broccoli on it. Because I was telling them, and this is something I really love broccoli on pizza. I was telling my, fellow dinner mates, which would have been Spicy, Ribbit, and Fuego, that I really love broccoli on pizza. And I was excited that they had it on the menu. So I got a pizza with broccoli on it. So that was actually, I do remember what I ate. But then the other feature of the meal that I remember is that we got beer. We had a beer together and we toasted together, and there's blueberries floating in our beer, which was really cool as well. And it was good beer as well, but it had these blueberries in it. And blueberries are kind of special to the people in Maine, and for good reason. I mean, they're fresh blueberries and they're kind of all over the place. And that was very unique to Maine, but also just very much I guess you could say, a visceral part of this experience that I remember. And then we hung out at dinner. We chatted for a while. I feel like I got to know all three of them quite a bit. We've really just shared a lot about ourselves. That was really cool. Went back to the Sterling. I'd had a private room there. This was actually, I think this might be the only place outside of even once I did hotels. I guess there were 3 hotels where I had my own room. But in the Sterling would be the only hostel where I ever got a private room, because the private room was like $10 more or something like that. So it was almost an incentive to go ahead and get one. So I got the private room because I knew I wanted to do a little bit of writing. I knew I wanted to call home. And I was just like, you know what? I'll get my own space since there's not much incremental cost to that. So I got my own space, did the rest of the laundry like I talked about, and actually put stuff around the room and everything. Charged all my stuff, because charging all your stuff, that was something. And I'll actually talk maybe a little bit more about that next time we get into a hostel stay where I'm plugging in all my stuff, because what exactly was my configuration. And basically did those things, but then got up and had breakfast. And breakfast was really good. A lot of it was almost continental breakfasty. I think there was bacon and stuff. That was true, I believe. I was still vegetarian at the time, so I didn't really care about that. So I was going back, I suppose, for like oatmeal and stuff, but it was all you can eat. So that was good. It was great. I really did kind of stuff myself because I was packing in those calories for the trail to come. But the especially nice thing about the breakfast wasn't really necessarily the food as much as it was the configuration of the dining room. So it was this big, huge window, so a lot of natural light. There were things on the wall you got the sense that you were in this historic place. But then the most important part is that it was laid out, lots of space, like I said, and there's these round tables. So you sit around these round tables with your fellow hikers. At this point, Kiddo and Hero are there. I actually hung out with them a little bit the prior night. And this is where I found out that Kiddo is a trail author, and I grabbed one of her cards. I wouldn't end up using that card for a while, but that card had a QR code to the audiobook, which ended up being a big part of my hike. And I can't wait to tell you about that, but I'm going to reserve that for a future time. Talked with Kiddo and Hero, found out their plans were to actually catch a shuttle to Boston to catch flights, like I had mentioned in the entry. Kiddo will be back and then we'll continue like a week later. And I actually believe that Kiddo was at the Sterling Inn with Ratatouille as well, because Ratatouille was there for a while. So that was kind of funny that we both actually ended up encountering her there. And then, of course, Fuego. So originally at the table, it was myself, Fuego, Kiddo, and Hero. And then Spicy and Ribbit came in, sat at the table next to us, and Fuego relatively quickly after that just realized she needed to get her stuff together, so she had left. So then it was myself, Kiddo, and Hero, but then also Spicy and Ribbit, and I slid over so we could kind of all chat together and everything. It was good. It was a great time just chilling with my fellow hikers before the 4 of us would then cross the Kennebec, and we'll get into possibly a little bit more of that next time, because I am definitely running a little bit long in this episode. But I thought it was good to do this. I wanted to give you guys a sense of what that Caratunk stop really was, even though, like I said, no zeros here or anything like this. Relatively quick stop if you think about it, but it has some significance because it is this great place and because it also was a meeting of a number of us. So next time, we'll talk about what's going on across the Kennebec. Until then, this has been Muse, and you have been listening to Muse's AT Podcast. Thank you for walking with me, and happy trails.
I'm here.